Yeah, no, my name is Eileen Power. I've been here in the school for more than 30 years, so I'm part of the furniture here at this stage. I probably would know a lot of the families of the children and a lot of, their parents and grandparents. Now, my own mother went to the old school. She started there in the 1930s and she's on the register here as well, along with her family, all the brothers and sisters. My father is from Innisteague area, so he moved into the area here when he was about 15. Now, my mother would have had great stories. She always spoke of her school days. They were taught through Irish. It was a two-teacher school at that point, and she had a Mrs. Power, no relation to me, and Mrs. Burke. Now, Mrs. Burke was actually the third generation of her family to be teaching in Ringville, which is most unusual. She followed her mother and she followed her grandmother, or grandfather, I should say, who was Francis Drew. Now, there is a story told, but her name isn't actually mentioned, but it is implied that she was the one in the story, that when she was 13, 14, she was going to take over teaching from, as it was at the time, you kind of followed in the footsteps of your parents or grandparents. Without any formal training, you were just handed the book, you teach that group. It was kind of, I suppose, monitoring, they called it. So she was established here as a teacher, and somewhere in the department, it wouldn't have been the department at the time, but somewhere in Dublin, somebody said that job isn't sanctioned. It's not. She shouldn't be there. So they sent the local priest up to her to find out, was she a good teacher? Should she be there? So when he went in, she gave him the book, the reading book that the children were doing, which was called the Primer 1. And the first page said, "The cat ate the rat." Now, the priest looked and said, now he used politically incorrect language, which I'm not going to say here. But he said, any country child would know that a cat ate a rat. So why would you be going away for 2 years to learn how to teach a cat eating a rat? So he sanctioned the post and wrote back to the department and kind of said, great, she's grand and everything like that. But they still weren't happy up there, so they sent an inspector down. Now, he travelled by train into Waterford and he was collected. But what he didn't know was that this girl's sister was going out with a man who was involved in Republican movement, we'll say, around here. And they got wind of this inspector coming down. So they, I suppose, attacked him or met him, whatever way you want to call it, down a Curramore. There's a little stream here. And they took him out, took his briefcase and his case that he had, threw all his papers in the stream and gave him a stern warning that under no circumstances were imperialistic forces to come around here, and absolutely under no circumstances they were especially not to interfere with any young teachers in the school. So he was sent packing back to Dublin and he sanctioned the post. So it was just an old story. Now, be it true or not true, I don't know. It was an old story. My mother's maiden name was Welsh. She was Catherine Welsh and her name was Kitty Welsh. She was always called Coit because of the Irish being here and everyone being taught through Irish. Now, I actually have her certificate when she finished school here. It's in 1941 and she was examined in the subjects of Irish, English, history, geography, maths and needlework. And that was part of the curriculum at the time, and you were judged on that. So, because obviously you had to make your own clothes and repair your own clothes at the time. Now, when I came, my father moved, they inherited or bought a farm over on the main road. Now, he was about 15 at the time, so he wouldn't have gone to school here. He went to a very small school called Clogher School, which is now a private residence as well, up around Innisteague. And he moved into the area. He left school at 15, as was the norm at the time, and he started farming. And he inherited a farm from maybe a third cousin or third cousin over in Rapatrick, which is just opposite the old graveyard there. And that's how come I'm a Slieverue person.
And I mean, I suppose in those days when your mother and father went to school, a lot of people would have left after primary school.
Yeah, most of them would. Now, there was, my mother used to say that there was a 7th class, which you could have stayed on for. Now, she didn't stay on, but I think she was about 13, 14 when she left school. And she did a shorthand course after that. And she got a job working in the arcade, which is long gone since. It's right beside the Bridge Hotel. It is now part of that little area there. And they just sold kind of bric-a-brac and stuff like that. She was to do the accounts or whatever there. And then she got married in 1960. And at that time, once you got married, you had to leave your work. So she left the work then and went on farming. And she spent the rest of her life farming and rearing a gang of us, 6 of us.
And what about any other stories way back? Have you ever heard any stories about school?
Yeah, my mother spoke often of the school. She was taught through Irish, and she used to say that they had to walk about 3 miles to school from where she was living, winter and summer. And Mrs. Power used to cycle out from Waterford with her children. Mrs. Power was a widow, and she used to cycle out all the way on the old road out to Ringville School, and when she'd arrive here then she'd have to light the fire. But she also was very motherly to the children in that she gave them hot cocoa on the cold days. She used to give them the hot cocoa, and they loved that because they only ever had bread and milk for school. And my mother used to talk as well of the shop that was down the road from the school here. It was Murphy's shop. And they used to have to hand in old copies to the shop because there was no such thing as wrappings or papers. And they used to take the page and they'd wrap it up into a cone, and you got your sweets in that cone. And now the shop is long since gone, but Gertie Murphy used to be there. Now she married and she became Gertie Whelan, so Tony is still there. And the family are still there. So there's a very old history attached to that house. It's just down the road here from the school as well.
And most of the children now that come here to school, where would they be from?
Now, at present, we have a huge range of children. We have ones coming out from Ferrybank because transport isn't a problem anymore. We have a lot of children who come from Ferrybank, but we also have children from the traditional families who were here in my mother's time. You may have seen some of them. We had the Roaches, we had the Atkinses, we had, one little girl spoke there. She would have been descended from the Malones. We had Carneys. Now, there are a number of children. They may have different surnames, but they're from the Carney clan. We have O'Donovans as well. Now there are a lot, I know I'm leaving out many of the names there. We have Grants. Some of them have finished school, but their descendants, or some of the Grant name is gone, but their descendants with different surnames are here as well. So, there are a lot of families here, with the Dohertys there as well. And that little girl who spoke, Sarah Doherty, her father and his family came here. That was Liam. And then Liam's mother came here. That was Maura Hartley. And Maura's mother again came here. That was Jo Marr. And she's on the register when registers came in. She's here on the register in 1915.
Wow.
So we have a lot. Now, the land on which the school is built, the man there would have come to school here as well. But he's long since dead. He's long since gone.
There's a great sense of loyalty to the area.
There is. I know we've new families in the area, but the parents and grandparents here, they have instilled a sense of history to the children who are here, and we hope it will keep up. That little poem now that the children just said a few minutes ago, that poem, I remember my mother saying that to us. Now, she couldn't remember all of it, but she did have the beginning of it. She was taught that in school as well. So, and so it's still alive. Sorry?
What's the origin of the poem?
It actually was, nobody is 100% sure, but there is a name attributed to it. Tom, no, I can't think of the surname just offhand now, but it is in the book by Jim Welsh. But there is a question mark over whether he actually made it up or not, but it is attributed to this man. I just cannot think his name at the moment. Yeah.
Listen, thanks very much for
Not at all.
We'll get a close-up of the certificate.
Yeah, and I also have, we found in my mother's effects as well, a card, we'll say a raffle card that she was supposed to have sold but obviously didn't, in aid of the Slieverue platform committee, which would have been the old dances at the Scowbridge and things like that, which she often spoke about as well. Now, I have a photograph of my mother. I haven't it with me now, but I have a photograph that was taken here in school. Seemingly there was a sub here in the school for a while, and she loved her camera, and she took groups of children around. Some of those photographs have survived. My mother is in that, and she would have been maybe junior infants. She looks very, very young in it, and that is the only picture we have of her as a real small child. You know, obviously at the time they wouldn't have had cameras, and that is the oldest picture we have of her. You know, so it's lovely.
It's the examination cert, isn't it?
Yeah, the one that children would have done when they left primary school, the primary cert. And it was the one basically that carried them through to most of them didn't go to secondary school. My mother now didn't go, because you had to pay for it at the time. You just went.